Rob Reifenheiser. I'm with Essence, that is not the women's service magazine. We do digital advertising. And I'm talking about the future of programmatic. So, the DSP hits the SSP with the DMP, the nexus comes together, and it's the first-party data gets the third-party data and makes the second-party data lonely. I will not do any of that alphabet soup. My promise to you is no acronyms and no numbers in my presentation. So programmatic has wide definition. Part of it is the automated buying, and part of it is the audience-centric nature of it. I'm going to focus on the audience-centric nature of it. The automated part is interesting, but it's not really what's going to catapult us into the future. I do banking in an automated way. That doesn't mean I pay my bills programmatically. And focusing on how you can get a few assistant media planners to spend less time doing insertion orders is not going to reap huge benefits. So I'm going to talk about audience. Okay, so we have to go back a little bit to understand the future. So in the early days, the first programmatic buys, there was great audience buying that really eliminated waste. And at that time, we were living in a world where you bought the entire audience of a publication. And so what you tried to do was minimize waste, and you were focusing on the composition of your target audience and making it as high as possible. And suddenly, you eliminated all that waste. And you were buying that proper audience, the one exactly who you wanted, but you weren't doing it on a premium site, so it was this huge cost savings. I mean, it was massive, that shift in savings that happened. At the same time, procurement people were being very aggressive, every agency person's friend, but they wanted a reduction in their fees. And they would come and say, boy, we've been with you a long time, and you're a good partner. We're having a tough time. I need you to reduce your fees, but I need you to do more work, and I need you to have even more people on my business. And those two things came together, and there was an opportunity there for agencies. And so programmatic really became the solution for agency margin problems, where you could take all that savings, take a big chunk of it yourself and add it to your margin in a non-transparent way, and suddenly your numbers were looking good. And that worked for quite some time. But the landscape is changing now. So we have platforms that are being demystified. People understand what's going on with programmatic. It's not some confusing thing. At the same time, we have agency people who were behind the secret walls and knew what was going on. They've become clients. So they're very informed. And the procurement has become educated on these topics. So as a result, you're seeing tons and tons of business going up for grabs. And that will continue. And so who is going to really survive in this new world? Well, first it's going to be the people who are transparent on what they're doing. And the whole next presentation is all about that, so I won't go too deep there. But what goes hand in hand with transparency is also being objective and being unbiased. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We've taken over some business for trading desks, and we've found that they were putting the entire budget for certain assignments into their own trading desk, just plopping it in there, because they were biased, because they could make money doing that way and make more money than if they went out and used other things. We would take over, and we would do things like, hey, we would do some Google Display Network that you didn't do anything of, and maybe we were going to do 2 demand-side platforms instead of just 1 and build reach. And as a result, we were buying those same exact audiences for up anywhere between 30 and 60% less cost, right? And it's not because we're bigger and we have bigger scale, it's because that we're not putting margin in there, right? So we can be perfectly objective because we are not, driving our own personal agendas. Survival requirements for programmatic will also be going beyond DR. Everybody looks there right away for the direct response. That's the one acronym I'll use, I apologize. So you have to go past that into branding and telling stories. And that can be done, and that can be done effectively. So you have to work that entire funnel. You have to have meaningful analytics, a real dedication to putting in the time, the effort, and the money to really learning things. And it's no longer about taking credit for what you're doing. It has to be about finding truth in what's going on in your performance. And you might find some truths that you really don't like, that your remarketing isn't really as effective as you thought it was, because averages lie. And you're taking credit for sales that might already happen, and you're also looking at a big pot of effectiveness, and it's really just a small segment. So you have to have really meaningful analytics to uncover the truth. And you have to have a data action plan. It's big data and it's clean data, and you don't want dirty data. Who does? But you have to know exactly what you're going to do with that data. So that data has to have a very clear plan. So moving forward, programmatic can solve communication problems. So the first one would be generic creative. It is amazing that there has been so much progress in programmatic buying, and we're buying very specific people, very specific segments in specific geographies, but often or not, we're just running the same creative anywhere. And there's an opportunity to leverage all of that data that we're using for the media buying and leverage it into the creative. So this example right here is an interesting one. It is not a DR example. It's actually a brand loyalty. It's for the Google search app. And we found out there was a group of people out there who they were lapsed users. They weren't using the app. And it really, some segmentation told us that it was based on, they didn't really understand the functionality of it. So what this ad does is it brings the functionality of the Google app to life. So when you tap on it right there, it knows what market you're in. In this case, it's Seattle. It tells you what the weather is in Seattle. It takes advantage of the time and then makes recommendations on what you can do based on that weather, that time, and that location. Right? So it really is bringing the brand attributes front and center and not just trying to sell someone with DR. Excessive frequency is a great thing that programmatic can solve. Again, numbers lie, right? So you might look at an average frequency and it's 7, but what you might find out is that while the average is 7, the reality is most people are getting it not enough or way, way too much. And that way, way too much is a real problem. If you haven't acted on an ad that you've seen 15 times, another 15 isn't going to make a difference. And we can use programmatic to really get in and make sure that we are not delivering that heavy frequency. It's a great opportunity. And then also connecting advertising and CRM. Big opportunity there. So now CRM programs, you can take an email address and link that up with user device IDs, and suddenly you're not left just doing paper mail on heavy glossy stock, but you can integrate your CRM support with your advertising support and have a true total experience that you're creating there, much more effective. So you can solve some communication problems, but you can also solve some larger marketing problems. First is the opportunity for a digitally connected journey all the way through the funnel. You know, in the old days, what we did is we do a big awareness, a big burst up front, and you'd calendarize it, and you'd say, this is our launch period. And then you would later come in with some DR tactics, and you hoped that the people that saw your brand awareness were the ones that you would then scoop up later with your DR activity. But you didn't know, you just hoped. Now you can create a digitally connected journey through your remarketing. Right? So you can go out there and have a very broad message that you're doing that starts at a high level and introduces your product, but then you can retarget that person and give them a specific use case that's relevant to them for the product. So it's very specific to the segment they are and how they would use your product. And then finally, you can go and have a call to action and get in. So you're creating that digitally connected journey. And once we get other channels out there, programmatic television, then you can really unleash that wonderful awareness tool that television is, but do it with a digitally connected journey. Future's going to be great. You can improve the overall customer experience. There's a great story that one of our creative directors talks about on how he went to his site and researched a engagement ring. And he bought that engagement ring from that store. And for the last 3 years, they have been remarketing him engagement rings. It's not a good experience, and it's not a good spend. So there's an opportunity to really improve that overall. And then accurately measuring ROI across all the channels. We can really use our analytics to solve those larger problems as it's tied to programmatic. So some interesting things there. But now we can jump like way into the future for a moment, right? So imagine that you have a decision engine that is going to make your marketing decisions for you. So first off, you would understand through economic modeling and forecasting how much demand was in the marketplace for all your different services, right? Understanding that economics, you could then look at the available impressions and understand where they are in that purchasing funnel, right? And then you can go through and what is your propensity to convert that person and what is the value of that conversion. That math can happen in real time. So you might decide that impression A, you really need more demand, so you're going to do more awareness, and it's a good spend to put it there. The next person, it might be a different product. You're very close to converting there, so you're going to have a DR message. This can all be done in real time, and it can be really amazing and reframe really what we're talking about with marketing. And think about the role of the agency. You are really getting into a level of marketing person's job in an interesting way. And you're no longer spending lots of time between budgets for different brands, and I'm going to do a budget for awareness and a budget for the DR, but it's all going to happen in real time based on the math and science. And then finally, minority port can be realized, right? So the Internet of Things is going to really open up the opportunities for communication. You'll go in the morning and your mirror in the bathroom will also be telling you what the traffic is for your area. It's going to tell you that your route for work that you usually does has some traffic. And you can have all that personalized message coming into your refrigerator and all these different opportunities. But then think about that. It's the minority point, but it's also with that decision engine, right? So you're really optimizing the experience from the person as well as doing it for the marketer themselves. All right, that leaves us with some questions that have to be answered in for us to get there. First is, what is that closed loop measurement system? Right? If we're going to get people and carry them through that entire connected journey, we really have to understand that better. How much does it take to convert one section of the funnel down to the next? And really understand it. And then it's going to be, well, who's going to do that best, right? A lot of conversations about the walled gardens that are out there, but they have these great data sets. Google knows what you're searching for. They're going to know where you're driving and what the temperature you're setting your house at the heat. Amazon knows what you're consuming from a media perspective, and they also know what you're buying. And so these people who have the relationships with people across devices and across time and are adding that important data there are going to be the ones that are best suited to do that. But they're very protective of that data. So you have that walled garden and they're not want to share it. So there's a real opportunity to partner with them, but how are you going to do the interplay between the different ones? And then that begs, what is the role of the agency then? When all this is happening in there, you're going to have to come in and understand which partner that you can use in the most effective way. Very interesting. And then how do you attract people and not just cookies? There was a lot of that discussed yesterday, so I won't go too deep there. But that's something that we'll really have to solve for. And so it really comes down to the survival requirements are really the same in the future as they are right now. You're still going to have to be transparent about what you're doing and what the cost of that media is. You'll have to be objective, because if you're evaluating these walled gardens, you're going to have to be going in and checking their homework, because they're going to be grading their own homework in many ways, and you have to be there representing your client and really doing it. Still have to go beyond DR. That meaningful analytics will always be a need there, and finally, you'll always need that data action plan. And with that, I will say thank you. And I believe I have a few minutes for some questions.
Great. Okay, we have a couple minutes. I'm going to have the first question because that's what I get to do because I'm on stage. A lot of people have sort of pointed fingers at programmatic in the last 3 months or so, saying that that's really sort of contributed to the rise of ad blocking. You're able to throw a lot of things at people, a lot of things they don't want, and so now they block them. Sort of, what's your viewpoint on programmatic and its relationship there?
I think programmatic has nothing to do with ad blocking whatsoever. I believe that the reason that ad blocking has come back is because consumers have lost that covenant with the brand to bring content free. Right? So if you think about when television first came out, you would have Lucky Strike, and there'd be the girl dancing, and it would be the sponsorship, and they were the sole sponsor, and the audience knew that that content was coming because the advertiser was paying for it, and it was free.
Right.
But publishers have pushed out, and now you have 1 million ads on the page. You don't know which one is really bringing it to you, and you've lost that connection. And until we restore that connection between the consumer and the advertiser, and that they're making content free, we're not going to get around this ad blocking problem.
So programmatic has really nothing to do with the problem here?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, good to know. Any other questions? Questions? Oh, back there.
Hey, Keith Lamontagne with Zimmerman Advertising. So a huge problem with programmatic is viewability. I think they say it's a viewable ad is 50% of your ads seen on screen for a second or less. And the benchmark for viewability in ads is 43%. Where do you see this conversation heading in the future with, ads being viewable?
Huge problem, right? I read an article the other day where it sort of knocked down all the different things that could be going on, whether it's viewable or a bot, and it came down to 8% of all impressions might actually have an opportunity for someone to see. 8%, that's really frightening. So yeah, I think that you need to really drive that viewability. One of the interesting things would be about whitelisting people in, right? As opposed to trying to figure out who the bot is, you can figure out who the real people are and let those people in as opposed to just anybody. Great analogy that I heard was when you're trying to do border security, you don't try to identify all the people who are coming in illegally. You just want to have passports for the people who are supposed to come in. And so looking at it that way, you could really narrow down a lot of the viewability problems.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. This was
Thank
great. Thanks.